I'm going to tell you something that happened to me and my partner Dex over 7 weeks last summer, and I need you to understand up front that I'm not a careful person by nature. I don't document things well. I don't keep journals. What I have are dispatch logs, some photos on my phone, and a conversation I recorded on the third to last day because by then I knew nobody was going to believe us and I needed something. I work wildlife recovery for a private contractor in South Florida. Not FWC, we're subcontracted through them, technically, but we operate on parcels they don't staff directly. Mostly it's the buffer zones between Everglades agricultural area and the actual park boundary. Canals, levee roads, sawgrass flats. Our job is carcass retrieval. When something dies in or near managed waterways, gators, wading birds, deer, the occasional panther if we're unlucky enough, we're the ones who go get it, log it, bag it, and deliver it to the lab in Homestead for necropsy or disposal. It's not glamorous. Most days it's hauling a 70-pound alligator carcass out of waist-deep water in 100-degree heat while mosquitoes try to crawl into your ears. But I've done it 4 years now, and I'm good at it, and until last June I thought I understood the job completely. We have water rules. Every recovery team gets them on day 1. Laminated card, fits in your shirt pocket. 8 rules total. They're not mysterious. They're not cryptic. They're practical safety guidelines for working in and around Everglades waterways where visibility is 0, the bottom is muck, and the things that live there can kill you. Don't enter water above your waist without a partner in visual range. Don't submerge your head. Don't work a retrieval alone after sunset. Mark your entry point. Carry your hook. If you lose footing, go horizontal and swim, don't try to stand. Check water temp before entering any canal between November and March. And the last one, which always seemed like a joke the first time you read it. Don't retrieve anything that isn't dead. Dex and I used to laugh about that one. He'd say, "What, you think I'm out here trying to wrestle a live gator into a body bag?" And I'd say something about how the rule was probably written after some idiot intern tried to save a half-dead bird and got his face torn up. And that was the story we told ourselves. Practical rule. Lawsuit prevention. Common sense. I don't tell that story anymore. June 9th. Monday. The dispatch came in at 6:40 a.m., early for us, since most calls don't drop until someone spots something during their morning commute. A maintenance crew on L-29 had reported a large carcass in the canal, west side, roughly 2 miles past the Tamiami Trail intersection. Species unknown. They described it as big, floating, wrong color. Dex picked me up at 7. He drives the truck, a white F-250 with the contractor logo on the doors and a flatbed toolbox bolted in the back that holds our gear. Waders, hooks, body bags, sample kits, a cooler with ice packs, the pole saw in case we need to cut through vegetation to reach something. It was already 84 degrees when we pulled onto the levee road. The sawgrass stretched out flat to both horizons, that particular shade of green-gold that means the water's still high from the wet season but starting to drop. Canal on our left, maybe 15 feet wide, dark as coffee. We found the site by the orange traffic cone the maintenance crew had left. I got out and looked down the slope into the water and immediately felt something I couldn't name. Not fear. More like recognition. Like the shape in the water was something I'd seen before in a dream I couldn't remember having. It was large. 6 feet, maybe 7. Floating just under the surface, so you could see the outline but not the details. Pale. Not white, more like the color of a raw chicken breast. Slightly iridescent where the sunlight hit the water above it. "That's not a gator," Dex said beside me. "No. Manatee." I shook my head. The shape was wrong. Too narrow. Too long in the limbs. "Well," Dex said, and he was already pulling his waders on. "Let's go see what we got." That was the thing about Dex. He never hesitated. For years working together, and I'd never once seen him stand at the edge of the water and not go in. He had this absolute faith that the world was knowable, that everything in it was either alive or dead or dying, and all three states were manageable if you had the right tools. I pulled on my waders. We grabbed our hooks, 6-foot aluminum poles with a blunt grapple on the end, designed for snagging and dragging without puncturing whatever you're retrieving. I marked the entry point with a second cone, took a photo of the GPS coordinates on my phone, and we went in. The water was warm. Mid-80s, probably. Typical for June. The canal bottom was soft muck, about shin-deep before you hit anything solid, and the water came up to my thighs within 3 steps. Visibility was maybe 4 inches, dark tannins from the peat, plus suspended algae, plus whatever particulate matter the recent rains had stirred up. We approached the shape together, shoulder to shoulder. Up close, it was worse. Not worse as in more decayed, worse as in less identifiable. The body was long, pale, and smooth-skinned. No scales, no fur, no feathers. The limbs were arranged wrong, not splayed out the way a dead animal's limbs spread in water. They were tucked close to the body. Like something sleeping. "What the hell is this?" Dex said. He had his hook extended, the grapple end hovering about 6 inches above the surface of the thing. He hadn't touched it yet. Neither had I. We stood there for maybe 30 seconds. The sawgrass rustled. A great blue heron lifted off from somewhere behind us with that prehistoric croak they make. The water was perfectly still around the shape. "Could be a big soft shell," I said. "A leatherback that got way lost." Dex looked at me like I'd suggested it was a submarine. "That thing has arms, man." He was right. It had arms. They were pressed against its sides, but they were arms. 2 of them. Roughly human in proportion, but longer. The fingers, and there were fingers, were webbed to the second knuckle with translucent membrane. We should have called it in right then. I know that now. I knew it then, too, in the way you know you should leave a party before something bad happens but you stay because the music's still playing and your ride isn't ready. Dex touched it with his hook. The grapple made contact with what I'd been thinking of as the shoulder area, and the flesh gave slightly, the way living tissue gives, not the way dead tissue gives. Dead things are either rigid or they're falling apart. This was neither. This was pliable. Warm-looking, even under the dark water. "Dex," I said. "I know." Rule 8. I know. He didn't pull the hook away. But look at it. It's not breathing. It's not moving. We've been standing here a full minute and it hasn't moved. Rule 8 doesn't say, retrieve only things that aren't moving. It says don't retrieve anything that isn't dead. So how do we confirm it's dead without retrieving it? This was the problem. He was right. Our confirmation tools were touch, temperature, and visible decomposition markers. This thing had no visible decomposition. Its temperature was unknowable without contact. And touch, the only touch we'd made, had been inconclusive. We call it in, I said. Get a biologist out here. This is above our pay grade. Dex pulled his hook away. He looked at the shape one more time, then nodded. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We backed out of the canal. I called dispatch, reported an unidentifiable specimen requiring specialist assessment, gave the coordinates. They said they'd send someone from the homestead office, probably within 2 hours. We sat on the tailgate of the truck and waited. If you're listening to this late at night, alone, and this is the kind of thing that keeps you up, if you come back to stories like this because something in them feels more honest than what people say in the daylight, then you should subscribe to this channel. I don't know how else to find the people who need to hear this. The biologist never showed. At 9:15 dispatch called back and said the homestead team was tied up with a panther necropsy and the earliest they could send someone was the following morning. They told us to mark the site, leave it, and move on to our next call. So we did. Except when we walked back to the canal edge to confirm the marking, the shape was gone. I don't mean it had sunk. I don't mean it had floated away. The canal water moves at barely a crawl this time of year, and we'd been sitting 20 feet from the edge for 90 minutes. I mean the thing was no longer in the water. The canal was empty. Dark, still, and empty. Current took it, Dex said. There's no current. Then it sank. Into what? We were standing in there. The bottom's 3 feet down, max. That thing was 6 feet long. Dex didn't answer. He stared at the water for a long time, then got in the truck and started the engine. I took a photo of the empty canal. I don't know why. Maybe because I already knew that something was starting, and I wanted to be able to prove it to myself later. June 11th. Wednesday. New dispatch. Different canal, this one off Chrome Avenue, further south, in a section that borders the park proper. Another carcass. Description from the caller, large animal. Pale. Floating. We looked at each other across the cab. Could be the same one, Dex said. Canals connect. He was right, the entire water management system is interconnected. Things can travel miles through the canal network. But not in 2 days. Not without current. Not something that size. We drove out. The site was almost identical to the first one. Levee Road. Sawgrass Flat. Dark canal. Orange cone left by whoever called it in. And there, just under the surface, roughly 6.5 feet of pale, smooth, motionless form. Same thing. Same shape. Same tucked arms. Same translucent webbing between the fingers. Or a different one that looked exactly the same. I felt something shift in my chest, not fear, not yet. Something more like the moment you realize a coincidence isn't one. When the pattern clicks into place and the world gets slightly smaller and less random than you thought. Same protocol, I said. We don't go in. We call it in and we wait. And if it disappears again? I didn't answer because I didn't have one. We called dispatch. Same response, specialist unavailable, marked the site, they'd send someone. I pushed harder this time. Told them what we'd seen Monday. Told them the first one vanished. The dispatcher, a woman named Carla I'd spoken to 100 times, went quiet for a moment and then said something I'd never heard from her before. Did you enter the water? Monday, yes. Today, no. Don't enter the water. We weren't going to. But Carla, what is this thing? Mark the site and move on. Do not enter the water. She hung up. Dex and I sat in the truck for 40 minutes. The shape didn't move. We watched it from the levee. The water over it was calm and clear enough to see the outline, the pale color, the tucked limbs. At 10:20 a.m., something happened that I will never be able to explain to you properly no matter how many times I describe it. The shape rolled. Not like a current caught it. Not like something disturbed it. It rolled, the way you roll in bed. A slow, deliberate, lateral rotation. The arms stayed pressed against its sides. The body turned maybe 45 degrees, and the face, and I'm using that word loosely, understand, the face came partially toward the surface. It was flat. Broad. The features were compressed, like someone had pressed a human face in clay and then smoothed the edges. 2 dark spots where eyes might be. A shallow depression where a mouth would go. No nose. No ears. Just the suggestion of a face. The approximation of one. And then it rolled back and was still again. Dex said a word I won't repeat. I grabbed my phone and tried to take a video. By the time I hit record, it was motionless again. Just a pale shape in dark water. That thing is alive, Dex said. Yeah. Rule 8. Yeah. So we leave. Yeah. We left. We drove in silence for 11 minutes, I know because I watched the clock on the dash the entire time, and then Dex pulled over on the shoulder of a road I don't remember the name of and said, "What happens if we keep getting these calls?" I didn't answer. Because something is putting them in the system. Someone is seeing these things and calling them in as carcasses. And they keep sending us. We don't have to go in the water. We went in on Monday. We didn't know. And the next guy. The next team that gets dispatched and doesn't know. This was the thing about Dex that made him either the best partner I'd ever had or the most dangerous one. He couldn't leave a problem alone. He couldn't be comfortable with a gap in the logic. He needed the system to make sense, and when it didn't, he'd push until it broke or he did. June 13th. Friday. 2 calls. Same description. Different locations. Both in the canal network, both within 5 miles of each other and about 8 miles from the original site. We went to the first one. The shape was there. Pale, still, tucked. We didn't go in. We watched it for an hour. It didn't move. I took photos from the levee, they all came out looking like nothing. Dark water with a vague pale blur under the surface. Could be anything. Could be a shopping bag caught on a root. The second call came while we were still at the first site. Dex said, "That's impossible. We can't be in 2 places at once. So dispatch another team." There is no other team. It's Friday. Marco's off, the Tampa crew doesn't come down until Monday. Then it waits. He looked at me for a long time. Then he looked at the shape in the water. "Let me ask you something," he said. "You ever retrieve something from water and had it not be what the call said it was?" All the time. People see a log and think it's a gator. No, I mean, have you ever pulled something out and had it be something you couldn't identify? I thought about it. No. Me neither. 4 years. Hundreds of retrievals. And now we've got this, 3 times in 5 days, and we can't identify it from the bank, and every time we call it in, nobody comes, and every time we leave, it disappears. What are you saying? I'm saying the system is acting weird, and the water is acting weird, and the two things might be the same thing. I need to be honest here about what happened over the next 2 weeks, because I can't give you a clean timeline. It blurs. The calls kept coming, not every day, but every 2 or 3 days. Always the same description from dispatch: large carcass, pale, floating, canal system. Always a slightly different location, but always within that same 8-mile radius between Chrome Avenue and the park boundary. We went every time. We never entered the water again. But the shapes, and by mid-June I was calling them shapes because I had nothing better, the shapes were changing. Not in size. Not in basic form. They changed in position. The first few were always face down, arms tucked, legs together. Horizontal. Classic dead float posture. But by the 4th and 5th sighting, they were angled. Tilted. The 6th one was nearly vertical, upright in the water, head just below the surface, feet somewhere in the muck below. Like it was standing. And the 7th one was facing us when we arrived. I don't mean it turned toward us. I mean when we pulled up to the canal edge and looked down, its face, that flat, smooth, compressed approximation, was already oriented toward the levee road. Toward where we would stand. Toward where we always stood. Dex photographed it. The photo shows nothing useful. Dark water, pale blur. They know where we watch from, he said. I didn't argue. June 23rd. Monday. The beginning of the 3rd week. I went to the dispatch office in person. It's a small building off US 27, shared with an agricultural pest control company. Carla was at the front desk. She looked at me like she'd been expecting me. The pale bodies in the canals, I said. Sit down. I don't want to sit down. I want to know what they are and why you keep sending us. I keep sending you because they keep getting called in, and recovery is recovery. The system doesn't distinguish. Bullshit. You told me not to enter the water. You know what these things are. Carla took off her glasses and rubbed her face. She looked tired. Not scared, tired. The kind of tired that comes from knowing something you wish you didn't and having nobody to share it with. Sit down, she said again. I sat. They're not new, she said. The calls. They go back about 6 years in our system. They used to be rare, once a month, maybe. Always the same description. Large, pale, floating, unidentifiable. Before my time, the teams that responded just logged them as unable to locate, because by the time they arrived, there was usually nothing there. They disappear. Yes. But not for us. They stay for us. She looked at me then with something I recognized. The same look Dex had given me the first day, the look of someone whose world just got smaller and less random. That's new, she said. That's why I told you not to go in the water. The old reports, 1 sighting, they leave, nothing's there. You're at 8 sightings and they're still appearing. That's never happened before. What does that mean? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I've reported it up the chain and the response I got was to continue dispatching as normal. Continue dispatching us specifically. She didn't answer. Carla. The directive says to continue dispatching the team that has established contact history. 6:40 a.m. Established contact history. My badge number. Dex's badge number. We were the contact. I drove back to the site. Not because I was dispatched, because I needed to see it again with this new information. I needed to stand at the edge of the canal and look at the thing in the water and understand our relationship to it. Dex was already there. He was sitting on the hood of his personal truck, not the work vehicle, parked on the levee road about 100 yards from the last marked site. When I pulled up beside him, he was eating a sandwich and staring at the canal. "There's two today," he said. I looked. He was right. Two shapes, side by side, maybe 4 feet apart. Both vertical. Both facing the road. Two. "They're multiplying," I said. Or they were always multiple and we're only now seeing more than one at a time. Does that difference matter? I think it matters a lot. He took another bite of his sandwich. His calm was starting to scare me more than the shapes. If they're multiplying, something is reproducing. If they were always there and we're seeing more, something is changing about how they present themselves to us. Carla says we have established contact history. That the directive is to keep sending us specifically. Dex chewed. Swallowed. Looked at me. Makes sense. Makes sense. In what world does? In the world where something in the water is building a relationship with whoever pays attention to it, and we've been paying attention for 3 weeks. The word hit me like a brick. Relationship. That's what this was. Not a discovery, not a mystery to solve. A relationship. Being conducted on terms I didn't agree to, in a medium I couldn't enter safely, with entities I couldn't identify or communicate with. And we kept showing up. June 26th. Thursday. 3 in the canal. All vertical. All facing the road. June 28th. Saturday. I wasn't on shift. I wasn't dispatched. I drove out anyway. 4. Same canal section. Same orientation. One of them was closer to the bank than any of them had been before. Maybe 3 feet from the edge, where the water was only knee-deep. Close enough that I could see details I hadn't seen before. The skin wasn't smooth the way I'd thought. Up close, close enough to lean over the bank and look straight down at, the skin was covered in fine, almost invisible texture. Like thumbprints. Millions of tiny whorled ridges covering every inch of the surface. The pattern wasn't random. It repeated. It was structured. Organized. And the face, that compressed, approximated face, had something in the depression where the mouth should be. Movement. Very small. Very subtle. A rhythmic opening and closing, barely visible under the dark water. Breathing. Or not breathing. Filter feeding, maybe. Cycling water. I don't know. I'm not a biologist. But the face was doing something. The face was active. The face was working. And the dark spots where the eyes would be weren't dark anymore. They were pale. Almost white. And they were tracking me. I stepped back from the edge. The nearest shape rolled forward, that same slow, deliberate movement, and its head breached the surface by maybe half an inch. Just the crown of the skull. Pale, wet, covered in those whorled ridges. Water ran off it in sheets. I heard a sound. Not a word. Not a growl. Not anything I can map to another animal. It was low, sustained, and directional. It came from the shape's head and it pointed at me. Like sonar. Like being swept by a beam of sound. I ran. I don't say that with any shame. I ran to my truck and I drove, and I didn't stop until I was back on US 27 with strip malls on both sides and people in parking lots and traffic lights and the complete architecture of the normal world around me. July 1st. Tuesday. Dex called me at 5 a.m. Don't go in today. I wasn't planning to. No, I mean don't go into work. Don't go to the site. Don't go near the canals. What happened? Long pause. I heard him breathing. I went last night. You went to the canal? At night. I had to see. I had to see if they were different at night. Dex, Rule 3, don't work a retrieval alone after sunset. I wasn't working a retrieval. I was just looking. And there's more than 4. How many? I stopped counting at 11. My hand was shaking. I held the phone tighter. They were all standing. All facing the bank. The closest one was on the bank, man. Not in the water. On the grass. Just the lower half was still in the canal. The top half was on dry ground. Did it? It didn't move while I was watching. But it was out of the water. Or coming out. And I turned my flashlight on and all of them, every single one in the water, turned their heads. Not their bodies. Just the heads. They all turned and faced the light. Neither of us said anything for a while. I'm calling FWC directly, I said. Not through dispatch. I'm going around the system. I already tried. Last night. I called the wildlife hotline. And they said they'd dispatch a recovery team. The silence was so complete I could hear the blood in my ears. They're going to send someone else to the canal. Yes. Someone who doesn't know. Yes. July 2nd. I called every number I had. FWC's regional office in West Palm. The Homestead Lab directly. A biologist named Patel I'd worked with on a panther case 2 years ago. Nobody had information. Nobody had heard of anything. Dr. Patel called me back around noon and said she'd looked in the system and found no dispatch logs matching the GPS coordinates I gave her. No logs. 3 weeks of calls. 8 dispatches I personally responded to. 3 I documented. All gone from the system. I checked my own phone. The photos were there. 7 of them. Dark water, pale blurs. They could be anything. Except one. The one from June 28th, the close-up, where I'd leaned over the bank. In that photo, you can see the texture on the skin. You can see the whorled ridges. You can see the face, just barely, under the surface. And you can see the eyes. Pale. White. Pointed up. At the camera. At me. July 5th. Saturday. I told myself I was done. I told Dex I was done. I called dispatch and told Carla I was refusing any further calls in that canal section. She said she understood. She didn't argue. She didn't try to persuade me. She just said, "Okay. I'll note it." And that was it. For 3 days, nothing. No calls. No dispatches. No drives out to the levee road. I stayed in my apartment in Hialeah and watched TV and tried to pretend the world was still the same width it had been in May. On Tuesday morning, July 8th, I went out to my truck to drive to a retrieval, a normal one, a confirmed dead gator on a county road in Kendall, and there was water on the ground beneath my truck. Not a lot. A shallow puddle, maybe a foot in diameter. But my truck was parked on concrete. It hadn't rained in 2 days. And the water was dark, that same tannin brown, peat-stained color of the canal water. I knelt down and looked under the truck. Nothing there. Just wet concrete in the puddle, already evaporating in the morning heat. I drove to the retrieval. Normal gator. Dead 3 days, bloated, easy recovery. Routine. But when I lifted it into the truck bed, I noticed something on the tailgate. A handprint. Wet. Fresh. 5 fingers and a palm, pressed flat against the metal. The fingers were long, longer than mine by at least an inch. And between them, where the webbing would be, the water hadn't dried yet. 2 distinct arcs of moisture between each finger, connecting them almost to the tip. I stood in the road in full sunlight, holding a dead alligator by the tail, staring at a wet handprint on my truck, and I felt something I hadn't felt since this started. Not dread. Not curiosity. Not the cold analytical distance I'd been maintaining. Rage. Something had followed me home. Something had been at my truck, in my parking lot, in my neighborhood. Something from the canal, from that dark, peat-black water, had walked to my apartment building in the night and touched my truck and left. And I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't fight water. I couldn't confront something I'd never seen standing in full. I couldn't report it because the system had already erased itself. I couldn't prove it to anyone because my evidence was a wet mark on metal that would be gone within the hour. I called Dex. Same thing, he asked. You too? Not a handprint. Footprints. On my porch. Bare, wet, heading toward my front door. Then stopping. When? This morning. Dex, what did you see? At the door. Nothing. Just wet prints that stopped about 2 feet from the threshold. Like it walked up and then, I don't know. Changed its mind. July 9th. Wednesday. The last dispatch I'll ever take. Carla called at 6:40 a.m., the same time as the very first one, I noticed. Same description. Large, pale, floating. But the location was different. It wasn't in the canal system. It was in the retention pond behind my apartment complex. Carla's voice was flat when she read it. The kind of flat that means someone is delivering information they know is wrong but can't refuse to deliver. You don't have to respond, she said. Who called it in? Anonymous. Carla. Who called it in? The system shows anonymous. No caller ID. No callback number. But the location data is GPS verified. I hung up. I walked to my balcony. My apartment is second floor, east facing. The retention pond is visible from there, an ugly rectangle of green water behind the building, surrounded by a chain-link fence, designed to catch runoff from the parking lot during storms. I looked down. It was there. Pale. Still. Vertical. Facing my building. In the retention pond behind my apartment in Hialeah. 10 miles from the nearest canal. In a closed body of water with no connection to the Everglades system. standing upright in 4 feet of stagnant water, looking at my window. And it was daytime. 9 in the morning. Bright, hot, Miami sun beating down on everything. People walking to their cars in the parking lot, passing within 20 feet of the pond, not looking, not seeing. Or seeing and not recognizing. Because who looks at a retention pond? Who stares at utility water? Its background. Its infrastructure. It's invisible. Perfect camouflage. Not because the things are hidden. Because people don't look at water. But I do. That's my job. I look at water and I see what's in it and I go retrieve what's dead. Except this wasn't dead. And it had followed me. And it was standing in full daylight, in a residential area, surrounded by people who couldn't see it because they'd never been trained to see it. I watched it for 3 hours. It didn't move. It didn't sink. It didn't disappear the way they used to. At noon, Dex showed up. He'd gotten the same call. He lived 4 blocks from me. Look at the pond, I said. He looked. Yeah, he said. There's one in mine too. Behind my building. In the drainage ditch. We stood on my balcony together, watching. I've been thinking, Dex said. About Rule 8. Don't retrieve anything that isn't dead. Yeah. I used to think it meant don't grab live animals. But what if it means something else? What if it means, if it isn't dead, the retrieval goes the other direction? I looked at him. If we go in the water and grab something dead, we bring it out. That's retrieval. That's the normal direction. But what if you grab something that isn't dead, and it retrieves you? I didn't answer. I looked back at the shape in the pond. We touched it, he said. That first day. I touched it with the hook. And ever since then, it's been coming closer. First in the canals. Then on the bank. Then at our homes. It's not chasing us. It's not hunting us. It's completing the retrieval. We didn't retrieve it. No. But we initiated contact. We entered the water and we touched it. And in its system, whatever system it operates on, that started something. A process. And the process is, things that touch, come together. The shape in the pond shifted. That slow, deliberate roll. The head tilted upward. The pale eyes caught the sun. That was 3 weeks ago. I quit the job. Dex quit too. We don't go near canals, retention ponds, drainage ditches, swimming pools, or standing water of any kind. I shower fast with my eyes closed. I don't look at puddles after rain. But here's what I can't stop thinking about. The handprints on my truck haven't stopped. Every morning, new ones. Wet, webbed, long-fingered. They're on the driver's door now. On the windshield. Yesterday, there was one on the glass of my bedroom window, outside, 2nd floor, and the moisture had run down in streaks like rain. And the retention pond, I check, from the balcony, every morning. It's empty now. The shape is gone. But the water level is lower than it should be. Like something large displaced it when it climbed out. Dex sent me a text last night. Just a photo. His front door, from the inside. The floor in front of it. Wet. Not a puddle. Not a spill. A shape. A wet silhouette on the tile, like something had lain down on his doorstep and pressed its body against the base of the door. You could see the outline. The long arms. The tucked posture. The smooth, featureless head. Pressed against his door like it was listening. Or waiting. Or learning where the threshold is. I don't know what happens when the water rules stop working because there's no longer any water between you and the thing you were never supposed to touch. I don't know what retrieval looks like when the thing doing the retrieving isn't you. I don't know if what's coming through our doors tomorrow or next week or tonight is hostile or curious or just finishing something we started. I know that every morning there are new wet marks, and they're closer. I know they're on glass now, on walls, on surfaces that mean something was vertical. Standing. Upright. Reaching. I know Dex won't answer his phone today. I know there was water under his door this morning, and that when I drove by his apartment, the blinds were closed and there were handprints on every window. And I know, because I looked, because I always look, because that's what they trained me to do and that's what started this, I know that the shape I saw pressed against his door from the outside is the same shape I saw today pressed against his door from the inside. Same outline. Same posture. Same approximate face, flat against the glass, looking out at me as I stood in the parking lot. Except Dex is 6 feet tall with brown skin and short hair. And the thing looking at me through his window was pale and smooth and had no features at all. And it raised its hand when it saw me. The way Dex always did.